Hello everyone, my name is Sonal Mishra and my project topic is Structural and Photoluminescence Study of Pb bis 8-hydroxychloride cadmium. Chapter number 1 Introduction. Light is a form of electromagnetic energy. To create the light, another form of energy must be supplied. There are two common ways for this occur: incandescence and luminescence. Luminescent device in a day-to-day life of urban civilization have become so essential that life cannot be imagined without this, which is due to the usage of various types of lamps, TVs, mobile display, LED lamps, LED TVs, signals, displays, etc. And luminescence in this process, when radiation is incident on a material, some of the energy is absorbed and re-emitted as a light of longer wavelength. This is called Stokes' law. In this process of luminescence, wavelength of light emitted is characteristic of a luminescent substance and not of the incident radiation. The light emitted could be visible light, ultraviolet or infrared light. This cold emission, that is luminescence, that does not include the emission of blackbody radiation, involves two steps: the excitation of electronic system of solid material to a higher energy state, and second is subsequent emission of photons or simply light. The emission of light takes place at characteristic time after absorption of the radiation. The parameter allows us to subclassify the process of luminescence into fluorescence and phosphorescence. Now this is the flow chart of luminescence, types of luminescence. So the first type is chemiluminescence, triboluminescence, cathodoluminescence, electroluminescence, photoluminescence, and thermoluminescence, radioluminescence. Each process mentioned above has its own significance and advantage in the field of science and technology. Emphasis in this present review has been given to study the basic phenomenon of luminescence. Now, chapter number 2, Instrumentation. The sample of luminescence. Photoluminescence spectroscopy is a contactless, non-destructive method of probing the electronic structure of materials. Light is directed onto a sample where it is absorbed and imparts excess energy into the material in the process called photoexcitation. One way this excess energy can be dissipated by the sample is through the emission of light or luminescence. In the case of photoexcitation, this luminescence is called photoluminescence. The intensity and spectral intent to the photoluminescence. Now, limitations of photoluminescence. Homogeneous and single phase material is base for the identification of an unknown. Must have access to a standard reference file of inorganic compounds. Requires tenths of a gram of material which must be ground into a powder. Powerful and rapid technique for identification of an unknown material. In most cases, it provides an unambiguous mineral determination. Identification of fine minerals such as clays and mixed layer clays that are difficult to determine optically. Now Fourier transform infrared characterization. FTI spectroscopy has been widely used in many industries and research to analyze samples. The analysts use the technique to measure the IR spectra of their samples, as individual samples have IR unique spectra. The information is extremely valuable for identification of components, functions, group in R&D activities, or simply recording and compiling them to develop a database. FTIR is a measurement technique that allows one to record infrared spectra. Now, chapter number 3, Experimental. The material used in this are various types of synthesis technique. There are various types of synthesis technique in this synthesis of cadmium. Now, advantages and disadvantages. Advantages: homogeneous mixing of reactant precipitate reduces the reaction temperature. Simple direct processes for the synthesis of final metal oxide powders, which are highly reactive and temperature sensitive. And disadvantages: this process is not suitable for the preparation of high pure, accurate stoichiometric phase. This method does not work well. This is the FTIR. This is a process, this is a diagram. Initially powder formed, then precipitate was filtered and washed several times with distilled water and dried in a vacuum. And this is chapter number 4, result. This is the graph which we get from FTIR spectroscopy. Wavelength and analysis of FTIR in cadmium. This is a diagram between PL intensity, emission and spectra. Thank you.